So it's not often that I have to buy a used lawnmower, but sometimes you find one that's so cheap, they're practically giving it away. And that's what you're looking at here, and on first impression, I know it doesn't look like much, but is that the only reason why it was so cheap? Now the ad makes no claims on its condition, but by the way it looks, there's simply no way it's going to start and run. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at this Bolens lawnmower that I bought for only $5. And the problem is that, according to the ad, it's been in their barn for a couple of years. And depending on how it was put up, there's a very good chance that it's going to have carb problems and isn't going to start. But before we go on, I'm going to record all the stickers I can find. That way if we need to order parts for it, we'll get the right ones. Now hopefully we won't need to do that because these don't sell for a lot of money. So while taking a closer look at this mower, there's one thing about it that's tough to overlook. And that is, it's very dirty and we'll need a good cleaning before we start taking parts off of it. So there is gasoline in the fuel tank, but we have no idea if it was poured in there yesterday or years ago. We are going to try and start it, but if it won't start, we'll have to service the fuel system. The oil looks good, although it's right on the edge of being too low, but all we need is enough for a test start. So after inspecting the blade, it was either installed this way or the blade hit something causing it to turn on the adapter. But if you look at the cutting edge, there's no damage to it, so it might have been installed this way. However, we might still have to inspect the flywheel key for any damage. Well, it didn't start with the fuel that was in the system, so let's try our own fuel this time. So it did start and run for a couple of seconds. That confirms that the ignition system works and that the engine has plenty of compression. Now technically it also confirms that the flywheel key is not damaged, but I still want to check it just to make sure. To get to the key, we'll take off the top cover and remove the starter cup on top of the flywheel. So what you're looking for is whether or not the top of the key still looks like a square. That would show that the keyway in the flywheel and the key seat in the crankshaft are lined up like they should be, which this one is. But if they aren't lined up, the key will not look like a square, but more like the letter Z. Now that I'm satisfied that this engine is not broken beyond repair, I'm going to give it a quick rinsing, which it's probably never had in its lifetime. Now one of the biggest reasons why I try and clean it before I work on them is that it helps to give you the best view of what I'm doing. But of course, it helps to keep dirt from going places where we don't want it to, like inside the carb or the fuel tank. So there is a screen at the bottom of the fuel tank, but the finer particles can pass through it and could collect inside the carb. And if you hadn't guessed it, I'm basically telling you what we're going to find during this project, so keep an eye out for them. I don't even clean my own personal mower this well. I only use my leaf blower on it unless I intend on working on it. Speaking of leaf blowers, you can use one to help dry the mower off unless you have time to just let it air dry. And since we don't need to replace the flywheel key, we'll install the starter cup back onto the engine. Once the cup is back in place, we'll then drain the fuel from the tank using a siphon and see what the gasoline looks like. And if it's stale or has water in it, it would make sense why the engine didn't want to start earlier. And after seeing just how oxidized the gasoline had become, it seems our guess was right. So either the gasoline was left in there for a long time or it happened in the fuel container. Now since the fuel tank is empty, we're now able to examine it and there is some debris in there. That means when we service the fuel system, it'd be a good idea to take off the fuel tank as well so we can clean it. Now to clean it, I'll just put some soap into the tank, agitate it, dump it out, and then rinse and repeat. I'll then leave it somewhere hot to allow any remaining water to evaporate from the tank, otherwise you'll get water back into the carb. Once the carb is off the engine, check and make sure that the O-ring and its retainer are not still stuck to the intake pipe. But as you just saw, they weren't there and instead still on the carb. Now you don't need to take them out, I was just showing you what they look like. Next, we'll use a large Allen wrench to open the drain bolt and then capture what comes out of the carb, and what we find is not good. There was a lot of debris that came out from the fuel tank which could possibly clog up the carb. Now don't forget to replace the plug, otherwise you could lose it and then you'll have to replace the carb. Next, we'll separate the fuel tank from the carb to make it easier to work on, but it is up to you. And once that's done, we'll take off the screws that hold the fuel bowl to the carb and then we'll carefully pry it free. And it's very obvious that there was a lot of debris sitting at the bottom of the carb. In fact, you can see the clean spot where the pickup used to be. And when looking at the pickup, you're going to see it's covered in the same debris, so it's a good thing that we cleaned the tank out. Next, we'll pry out the white plastic cartridge from the carb and see if any of the many openings need cleaning. And as usual, it's going to need a bit of cleaning. Now I find it best to take it apart, that way you can get to the openings you can't see. Now to be honest, it really isn't that bad, and the stale gasoline was probably what was keeping the engine from starting. So I'm using carb cleaner, but I'm sure there are other types of cleaners that would work well too. Now if you have access to an ultrasonic cleaner, that works great, but you really don't need one. Next, we're going to use our cleaning wires to make sure the main fuel jet is as clear as it can be. Now just because it's open, doesn't mean it's open far enough for the carb to deliver enough fuel the engine needs to start and run. We'll then follow that up with some carb cleaner, and hopefully that's enough to get the engine working again. And finally, with everything as clean as we can get it and all the openings have been cleared and chased, we can then put the carb back together again. Just to let you know that putting the carb back together is tougher than taking it apart. There are a couple of details that you need to pay attention to, otherwise the carb will either leak fuel or not work at all. But if you want to skip all the cleaning and detail work, I'd recommend that you just replace the carb instead. And despite what's going on in the market right now, these carbs can still be found for cheap, so it's worth looking into. Now one of the last details to address is replacing the O-ring and its retainer on the backside of the carb. If you do forget this part, it's doubtful the engine will even start. However, I've never not done this, so I can't be sure. In fact, I might have to try it one day and find out what happens, that way I can let you know for sure. It also might be a good idea to look through the fuel line just to make certain that it hasn't collapsed inside. Because if it is collapsed, it'll reduce fuel flow, causing the engine to stop running after a couple of minutes. But after looking through this one, I could see right through it and there was no signs of any damage to it. Also, be sure to reconnect that breather hose for the emission system to the backside of the air filter base. I also took the chance to clean the air filter base because there was still quite a bit of dirt inside it. This was a result of the air filter not being cleaned and oiled on a regular basis. So for right now, I cleaned and oiled the filter that came out of this machine. However, when the new filters do come in, we're going to be replacing it, and that's because I plan on selling this machine, and having a new air filter is a good selling point. Yet another selling point is sharpening and balancing the blade, but you don't need anything special to do it. Having a nail on the wall to balance it works well too, but it can be tricky. Just make sure that you put the blade back on the right way, otherwise there'll be no point in sharpening it. And believe me, if you're not paying attention, it's really easy to do. And if all possible, try getting gasoline without any ethanol in it. Ethanol doesn't age very well and could cause problems down the road if you leave it in the mower for a long time. And the very last thing to do is to reattach the pull rope to its guide, prime the engine with fuel, and then try starting it. It's been running for several minutes, which is plenty of time to get the engine good and hot, so let's see how it starts back up. The good news is that it's really easy to start hot or cold, but the bad news is that it could be running a bit smoother. Now because of the age of the mower, I think it would be a good idea to check on the valve clearances despite the engine not having any starting problems. We also need to do an oil change and also address the wheels too. So before we sell it, we'll have to wait and get these last items done, especially for my peace of mind. I just figured that if I'm going to ask good money for this lawnmower, it should probably be in the best shape it can be, but you don't have to agree with me. So my question is this too much effort to put into a mower that won't pay out as much as a self-propelled mower? In other words, does it deserve less work because it's going to bring in less money? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.